It's just past midnight here in Qatar, and we're outside of Doha's Hamad International Airport to fly on the world's #1 ranked airline. We've covered so many different carriers that it's been almost 2 years since I last flew with Qatar Airways, so I decided to treat myself to a 15-hour flight in their world-renowned Q suites after finding a killer deal on the flight from here to São Paulo, Brazil, one of their longest flights. Things went far from the plan, so we'll look at that while also exploring all of Qatar's business class perks and discussing the relationship that makes this specific route so successful. Timestamps and chapters are below for each phase of the journey. Now let's head inside where the world's second best airport was calling my name. The check-in desks are somewhat comical because of Qatar's sheer market size here in Doha. There's 4 entrances to the terminal building and all but one of them are dedicated to Qatar. Even inside, almost every counter is for Qatar Airways and then the one section at the far end for all other airlines. For business and first-class passengers, however, we need only head to entrance number 1, dedicated to Qatar's premium customers. Inside the door, you are greeted and shown to your proper area. First class on the right is more enclosed, private, and with a direct link to the lounge. Business class is on the other side, and you'll see that it's still a very nice check-in area, although maybe not as private as first class. They not only have these booths for check-in, but also plenty space to relax if you need a moment before security. Just like first class, we have our own security and immigration. First class passengers can reach the Al Safwa lounge from here, but for us, we get access to the Al Mourjan business class lounge, which is a walk, albeit a short walk. Down the escalator and to the left we reach the main rotunda. You know, the one with the famous lamp bear statue and grand ceiling that you've seen in every Qatar Airways ad for the last 10 years. The airport is a spoke system where you have the A and B gates to the left and right of this hub, and then the C, D, and E gates are down the long hallway. This is handy for us as the Al Mourjan lounge is just to the left towards the A gates. There's a big escalator to get us up to the lounge. They actually scanned boarding passes at the bottom, making it so that when we got to the top, we were able to just continue right inside. Not before appreciating this entrance, however. Qatar and their designers always know what finishings to use to scream luxury. Not only that, but behind that wall is the entrance where you're greeted with a big metal sculpture of sorts, which is the level of art that I'll never fully appreciate. Around the corner, we pass a bag check, but then a bunch of sleep booths that are typically occupied all night long and with some refreshments in the center. The dining room's up above, but below that is a great water feature and fountain with the chandelier in the spiral staircase. There's another refreshment bar below here with some dessert-type snacks. Then a group of seats near the window, being off to the side, it's actually fairly private and has the best ramp views from the lounge. The smoking room is also located back here, and then some much more spaced-out seating right outside. The center of the lounge has this elevated platform with privacy partitions everywhere so that you don't feel like the spotlight is on you in the middle of the lounge. At least there's even more refreshments here, so you never have to go all that far for a can of Sprite. There's a business center off to the side which offered the quietest seats if you need that to be productive, although there's also an honest-to-goodness business center just off that space, along with a game room, which I found to be in a weird spot. Plus, you guessed it, more refreshments. At the far end of the lounge is the deli, kinda. It's not like a formal dining room, but they do have QR codes to order food, including custom sandwiches, so actually I take it back, it is a deli. Heading up to the main dining room, there's 2 ways to eat. They have the buffet and the menu. The buffet has 3 sections. One counter is starters, largely meze options, which complements the bar, which also offers special order sushi with a form at the counter. And then lastly is the hot dishes, which is more main course type options. If that's not your speed, you can also use the QR code on the tables. As soon as you get upstairs, they'll seat you like any normal restaurant, and then you can scan the code and view the menu on your device, order with the waiter, and all included in your ticket. From up here, you also have a great view of the rest of the lounge, even though there's a gnarly glare on the window. That lounge is fantastic, and it makes sense why it's won basically every award possible. That's still not all, not even close, as the Hamad Airport has been swapping the #1 spot for best airport with Singapore's Changi Airport for the last 5 to 10 years largely. Plus a second, newer lounge for business class passengers. As mentioned, from the lamp bear statue, the C gates are one long hallway connecting the main atriums. The wood ceilings with concrete contrasts are great, plus the restaurants all with their own identity. And with no shortage of activities, just walking to the far end, we pass an Apple store, a jungle gym, multiple jungle gyms actually, a TV area and reading area, and food for everyone. I mean, this is a vegan organic restaurant, and this is a store just for Oreo products. Not to mention, you can buy everything from luxury items to literal cars. So let's play with the theoretical that you buy a car waiting for your flight. Sure, the new overhead bins are larger than ever, but not Ford F-250 large. And if you do have to get all the way to the end of the sea gates, that walk can be long, so they do have a tram that can transport you to the other end. The sea gates then end at the most famous part of the airport, arguably after Lampbear. The garden. Just like Singapore, the airport in Doha has a ton of plants with a full glass ceiling to allow the natural light in. But unlike Singapore, it's fully enclosed, so it isn't as humid as the Splash Mountain line in Orlando in August. Perhaps the best part of the garden here is that it's essentially just a big mall. I mean, everywhere you look, there's more shops and food, from high-end luxury to literal fast food. Something for everyone. On top of that, there's literally a desert oasis, pathways, huts, everything you need to create an environment that makes you forget entirely that you're in an airport. Honestly though, one of my favorite parts aside from the nature sounds pumped in is the treetop walk that goes over the top, allowing for a great view down into the garden. But that's not even the best view, because if you're in business class, you can access the new Al Mourjan Garden Business Class Lounge. Just before you reach the garden, you'll see a lobby and elevators to scan people into this lounge. Welcome to the second and newest of the business class lounges here in Doha. It's basically a V shape, with this atrium being in the center and then one wing coming off in each direction. Before that, also in this atrium, is the Louis Vuitton Cafe, which looks super fancy but isn't included in the ticket price like the rest of the lounge. Going down the right wing, we see most of the dining options available, plus some great amenities that aren't found in the other lounge. First off is a spa and gym. The gym is free and comes with a changing room. It doesn't have the most equipment, but does have enough stuff to break a sweat before fully indulging for the next 15 hours. There's also the spa, although the treatments are not free, ranging from about $50 to $500. This side also has the gaming room. The other lounge had one too, but this one has foosball and pool. Not to mention the cabinets have surprises, not just games, but also a PS5. Basically, the rest of the side is dining. There's a small section of seating, but then past that is the bar area with light snacks, and then the rest of the seats have a QR code to order food through for a very relaxed dining experience. They did have a smoking room in the back located next to the buffet section, although it was empty at this awkward time of day where it was too early for breakfast, but dinner had wrapped up. They do have a private dining room, which piques my interest, but then the cool part is along the edge where there's more private seats that have a great view out into the garden. Then the other side of the lounge, which I found to be much more open as it wasn't packed full of dining tables. Honestly, this part of the lounge was almost entirely just seats to chill in. Not necessarily for dining, but in groups of 2 to 4. For food on this side, they only have some quick grab items in the middle. Mostly soft drinks, tea, coffee, and pastries. There's a meeting room and then this cool water feature in the center. Other than that, you'll find quiet rooms and shower suites located on this side, so you really only need one of the lounges. It's a great way to split up the many business class passengers on Qatar, while, most importantly, giving a lounge option closer to this side of the airport, so that you don't have an hour-long walk from the lounge to your gate. Enough lounges. Let's go fly Qatar business class. My gate, A10, is at the far end of the A gate, so I hiked over there about 30 minutes before boarding so I'd be there with enough time to get on board early for some footage. Qatar's gates have document checks to enter the boarding area, and then they mark you as boarded so that once the gate opens, you can just file on board. To organize passengers once in the gate holding area, they separate the seats so that each group has its own section, and they can clear them out one by one. Although truth be told, as soon as they were about ready to board, everyone bum rushed the gate anyway. Now originally I booked this because it's a unique route, but also because it gives me 15 hours in the Q suite for a fraction of the US route's cost. I had the perfect seat picked and was honestly super excited until I received this email a few days before the trip. So no more Q suite. They did offer a free change to a Q suite flight, but because of how short notice it was, I already planned my flights before and after and didn't have the flexibility to do that. So welcome on board Qatar's other business class of the 777. Of Qatar's 7 777-200s, 5 of them are Q Suite, and the other 2 look like this. Now these aircraft are super long range, so they're used to fly less dense long-haul routes, but as to why we find them on São Paulo is beyond me, as we'll discuss later. It's just a bummer because I already missed out on Lufthansa's Allegris because of an equipment swap, and now I've lost out on the Q Suite journey I've looked forward to for months. I will say that it was only about 2/3 full at least. We did have a fully sold out business class cabin until that email, and then it seems a good chunk of people jumped ship. And some others didn't. And some didn't realize until they got on board. Oh well, I mean it's still Qatar, so let's see how much the soft product can make up for this. They say you're only as bad as your weakest link, and well, this link is weak. Like, really weak. Let's take a look. The seat has an adjustable headrest with Qatar logo flap that kept falling off. There's reading lights between the seats and also a privacy partition that either barely came out or maybe mine was just jammed, but like I really couldn't get it out any further than this. There's a counter between the seats, and at least it does extend out pretty far so that you're fairly separated from your seatmate. On top of that counter is a good amount of counter space, and then halfway through the flight I realized there was a hidden compartment here with a water bottle. The armrest behind that also hides the seatback TV remote, and below that is some small storage, only partially enclosed. The tray table in front of that pulls out, and I will say that it is sturdy and large. There's even more storage on the side of the front of the divider, which is a bit more protected. There is a ton of legroom, which also hurts us because the universal port is on the front of the console, which is normal, but the length isn't normal, so you have to get out of your seat to plug into it. Just kinda awkward. The TVs are in front of you, but below them is some more storage. It's where they kept the literature pocket and made for good shoe storage, but also this very large cubby here that basically fits my whole backpack. There's 3 windows per seat, although the last row of the cabin is missing a window. And then the armrest on this side is where you'll find the seat controls. The good thing with an old airplane, however, is overhead air vents. Fortunately, the amenities are still strong as it is still Qatar, starting with the famous lemon mint. We also got refreshing towels with a diptyque roses scent, which is somewhat signature to Qatar. They do offer headphones, which had great noise cancelling but a bit uncomfortable. And then amenity kits were also from Diptyque. It had socks, which were hiding the eye mask, and then a perfume and the Diptyque amenities of lip balm, body lotion, and face cream. We did get PJs in whatever size we preferred, and came with shirt, pants, and slippers. The bedding was great, as Qatar offers these incredible fuzzy blankets that are potentially the most comfortable out there. Then the pillows are also incredible, with these pillows at each seat about as substantial as any other bed pillow. But we also got the throw pillow. I saw Amsterdam and Singapore as well, so I guess just lucked into the San Francisco pillow myself, but I love it. Honestly, Qatar thrives in its soft product, but in seats like this, it's the true definition of putting lipstick on a pig. If you watched my Emirates video recently, you'll know what I mean when I say that Qatar and Emirates are being tested like never before. Their structure has worked on this whole hub and spoke thing, but now other airlines are starting to figure it out. Riyadh Air is up to a promising start, and Air India seems to be heading in that direction depending on how things work out with the Tata Group. I mentioned in that video that Emirates and Qatar are going to have to give up part of their pie or evolve into something the industry has never seen before. Well, in Qatar's favor, this fiscal year was their best performance in their 27-year history, posting a $1.7 billion profit. Not quite Emirates level, but very, very strong. So how do they grow with this? We've already seen the 737 MAX bring a great regional expansion to the short to medium haul markets, and the post-COVID era brought Chinese and Japanese routes roaring back. They also formed some very strong partnerships, which admittedly was also forced to happen due to the A350 issues they suffered, requiring them to form these partnerships so they could hand off some of the routes. Now the A350s are back, but the partnerships seem to have remained and have been largely successful. The Iberia partnership brought an insane profit increase to the Barcelona and Madrid flights. The Finnair partnership still sees Finnair operating the Doha and Qatar connections to Stockholm, Copenhagen, and Helsinki. They also maintain their 10% stake in Cathay Pacific and their 3.5% stake in China Southern, the largest airline in China. They also saw growth out west this year with Toronto being added and increased frequencies to Miami and New York. In the southeast, they've added capacity to Australia and New Zealand, with Australia seeing more A380s and Auckland being upgraded from the 777-200LR we see here to an A350-1000. So I just wonder what routes we see next. While they haven't said anything concrete, I wonder if we'll see any previously served routes return, such as Buenos Aires, which was a previously served Fifth Freedom destination connection through São Paulo, but also the second largest metro area in South America, and not a LATAM hub. On a similar note, Rio de Janeiro. Emirates has found success there as a vacation destination, but also connecting the Asian diasporas north of São Paulo. Canberra, Australia is another interesting one. Australia has restricted Qatar's ability to return to the Australian capital, which was previously served. Helsinki and Kigali pique my interest as Qatar has partnerships with their main airlines, but only those partner airlines currently serve Doha. And lastly, Philadelphia. Qatar used to fly here, but stopped. Since then, American has begun shifting its New York hub's traffic to Philly, including an American Airlines operated flight to Doha. With the connections being added in Philly, I wonder if we'll see a Qatar Airways return. It's anyone's guess though, but still some fun speculation. The in-flight entertainment had me curious as the screen and interface looked to be much older. What I found is that the content was more or less the same, I just got overly frustrated with the lag of the touchscreen and seatback remote was basically non-responsive half the time. Fortunately, even on this old plane and screen, you can still see just how many titles are available. Plenty to keep you entertained for multiple flights. TV shows are the same story with multiple episodes and lots of favorites, even if they've removed a couple of my go-tos in the last couple years like Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Superstore. At least you can add things to favorites, which is great with a selection this large, but unfortunately the map is just some default pages and not interactive. I was also nervous about the Wi-Fi, but it looks like we did indeed have Wi-Fi. It's just that it's only free for high-status members. At least it's only $10 for the full flight, as most carriers charge out of right field for full flight Wi-Fi. The speed, however, is slow, so I guess I'm glad I only paid $10 for the full flight. On top of that, for over half the flight, internet was unavailable, pretty much from West Africa all the way until nearly landing. Believe it or not, I had to film the menus later since I completely forgot. They looked out of place as I waited for my Ryanair flight, but you'll see the main menu and the wine menu. Airlines like this literally fly around the world, making it super easy for them to source their wines from some of the best wineries around the globe. The food was a bit more simple, and I do love how Qatar does it. Essentially, they have it separated into the a la carte and breakfast menu, but it was really just one big a la carte menu. We did have a formal meal after departure that was seemingly supposed to be more of a breakfast with our 8 a.m. departure, but from then on, it was a la carte entirely. Order whatever you want, whenever you want, and they really do have some great stuff available to look forward to. Our first meal started with nuts and a drink, and you know I had to choose the karak chai. Oh, how I miss the karak chai. They then set up the tablecloths before decorating it with the fancy business class water glass and the candlelight, along with the bread basket and butter, salt, pepper, and honey. To start with, I chose the fruit plate. I don't know how they do it, but these carriers always have the best produce. It doesn't even matter what season it is, so it's always a must. Then I went with the classic Arabic breakfast, which included, and I promise I'm trying my best here to pronounce it, fowl bin tahini, feta, cucumber, tomato, olives, and pita. It's just like, I think they gave me the whole tree of olives. I mean, I love olives, but this is going to be a heck of a task. Inshallah. After the meal, they passed out hot towels for everyone, and then it was time for setting up the bed. It doesn't have a separated footrest, which always makes me wary that the seat won't go fully flat, as it has trouble supporting the weight that way. Sure enough, my suspicions were confirmed as the seat was made a flat surface, but at an angle, and a fairly steep angle at that. When laying on it, I would start sliding down, so this little footrest came in handy to lock me in place. They did offer a turn-down service, complete with a mattress pad they brought from the back, which covered the whole seat, which is nice since it's two different materials. Then the pillow, which looks extra fancy, but it's really that same pillow from before with a pillowcase, which makes it look better, but also it's nice if you've been throwing it on the floor or something. Then the comforter, which fully covers the space, and then some. And I mentioned before, but it is so incredibly comfy it's stupid. It does make a pretty good bed, all things considered, and perhaps the only perk of a seat like this is there's no restriction for your legs and feet. They've got all the space they could need. So as we passed by the Nile River, however, I was dead tired and straight conked, so I'll see y'all in a moment. I set an alarm so I could wake up with enough time to eat something, and at the moment, we were halfway across the Atlantic and about 5 hours from Brazil. All but one window shade was closed, and you can see how it illuminated the cabin. But honestly, I'm chill with it, since it's an all-daytime flight. And we got eye masks anyway. No matter, because I was ready for another meal. For this one, I chose to go with the Arabic meze platter, which was a bit different from other Arabic meze platters I've had, with a pesto hummus, labna tahini, avocado muhammara, and pita bread to dip. Super tasty, just a bit different. Then I decided to get the afternoon tea setting, which came with 3 finger sandwiches wrapped together, warm scones, clotted cream, and pastries, all made 100% better because they had my favorite tea in the world, TWG's Vanilla Bourbon. Perfect for this tea time. After that, I sat back and got some work done as we finished our journey across the ocean. And speaking of lipstick on a pig, the same can be said for the lavatories. These things are huge, but they look ancient. Although they do have these classic Qatar amenities. We see the Diptyque hand soap, Diptyque lotion and mist, and dental and shaving kits. It may look a bit janky on board, but at least you'll get off smelling like $1,000,000. Before landing, there was one more thing I had to order: caviar and champagne. Caviar is typically reserved for first class only, but starting a couple months ago, Qatar introduced it on 13 business class routes. Some of the most premium, including Boston, Dallas, Los Angeles, New York, Houston, DC, Hong Kong, London, Melbourne, Sydney, Paris, Singapore, and São Paulo. So riddle me this: if this route's premium enough to be one of the only 13 destinations to serve caviar, then how on earth are they okay sending this seat product on this route? Sounds like they'll be changing that soon, however, at least partially. And as for the caviar, it seems they'll be testing it on these routes before deciding whether or not to expand its route selection. With one more Diptyque towel, we were making our descent into Qatar's only Latin America destination. Qatar and São Paulo have an interesting but successful relationship. The Middle Eastern airline launched the flight to the world's 4th largest metro area back in 2010, where it was, and still is, the airline's only destination in South America. Not just that, it's the only destination in the Western Hemisphere south of Miami. So why is this route so important? Well, the Southern Hemisphere is notoriously tough to connect to since it's so much further from the world's economic hubs. I mean, you can reach North America and Europe, but Asia is pretty much out of the question of modern aircraft. This sucks because if we look at Brazil itself as the topic of this video, their largest diasporas come from Portugal, Spain, and Italy, but after that, it's China, India, and Japan. Brazil actually has multiple of the world's largest Japanese communities, and China is the country's #1 business partner by far. The main problem? It's tough to transport people between these places despite the demand. Air China recently resumed their 5th Freedom flight from Beijing to São Paulo via Madrid, with load factors through the roof. Airlines like Turkish and Qatar, however, remain the most affordable options, therefore taking the bulk of this connectivity. In 2016, LATAM and Qatar also inked a partnership. LATAM is Latin America's biggest airline by far, and Latin America is one of the least connected parts of the world. São Paulo was chosen as LATAM's main international hub as it was closer to Europe and a larger city than Santiago. LATAM sees 60 destinations out of São Paulo alone. Guarulhos also is the second busiest airport in Latin America behind Mexico City, and third most connected behind Bogota and Mexico City. With Qatar needing to reach more places but short on aircraft at the time, and with LATAM operating at a loss at the time, Qatar picked up a 10% stake in the company, which brought LATAM a $608 million capital increase, making the airline profitable after one of their worst few years in recent history at the time. At the time, they were also both One World partners, so this just made it a bit more official. They beefed this partnership up again in 2021 after the first 5 years proved successful. Essentially, Qatar passengers arriving in São Paulo could now connect to 45 additional destinations, mostly Brazilian cities, on top of Uruguay, Peru, Argentina, and Chile. And LATAM passengers arriving in Doha could now code share through to 10 more places, like Maldives, Nairobi, Bangkok, Hong Kong, Seoul, Tokyo, Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, and Baku. So there's your East Asian connection they were looking for. This route has continued to be hugely successful for both cities and airlines. At the time, Qatar serves the route 2 to 3 times daily with 777-200 LRs. These are their longest range 777 but lowest capacity aircraft that could reach the continent. They have varied the aircraft type sporadically in the past, but it seems that at least one daily flight will now be covered with the A350-1000, which has a slightly higher capacity, but more importantly, the guarantee of Q suites. None of this mess we got today. I mean, seriously, São Paulo was chosen as one of only 13 destinations to see Caviar, so why on earth would they risk a cabin like this on a route like this? I mean, if it's as premium of a route as it seems, Qatar's really shooting themselves in the foot here. Definitely not representing the brand they advertise. If I sound cynical about this cabin, it's because I am. Straight up. Sorry not sorry. Honestly, it's just a bit frustrating. Obviously, Qatar Airways markets the hell out of their Q suites. I mean, you can't be on their website without being overly aware of that product. Then when I booked this flight, I had Q suites on both legs. They proudly label that in like 3 different places, and they do everything in their power to get you excited for the Q suites, and it works. They really do have the best product out there, but then they pull the rug out from under you. What they've got going on now is walking a fine line between false advertising and entrapment. Draw you in with these flashy seats and then slap you in a 222 product that could have been in Fred Flintstone's car. I mean, I was supposedly spending just under 20 hours in a Q suite on this trip, and instead I got 0. That being said, they do still offer a great soft product. My cabin crew was absolutely incredible. They get an 11 out of 10. The food was top tier and presented wonderfully, not to mention the incredible selection and ease of an a la carte system. Their amenities are incredible and makes for the ribbon that typically seals the deal. I mean, when you've got your diptyque amenities in your closed-door suite, it's like a private retreat. But with this, it's like taking a Qatar amenity set on a Tunisia flight. Sorry Tunisia, I didn't mean to have you catching strays. I actually did enjoy my flight with y'all last year. Honestly, they're kind of where United was about 5 or so years ago. Polaris was a revolutionary product. Sure, it's not the Q suites, but when it came out, it was the talk of the industry. They had it on their new aircraft, but the older 787-8s and 777s were slow to catch up. People were going into flights expecting Polaris and then getting a 232 or 242 setup. United slowed the advertising of it until it was a bit more streamlined to the point where now, unless you're on select Hawaii routes, and only for a short while longer, you'll have Polaris on every United widebody. Qatar may have to look at a strategy like that. Either ensure Q suites for passengers, or stop setting the bar for that. I'll end this by saying that I definitely plan to redeem myself. I mean, it's been almost 2 years since I last flew Q suites. I really was looking forward to this journey. I saved up for a while and searched for the best possible deal only to have the rug yanked out from under me last minute. I wrote to Qatar to see if they'd be open to any sort of compensation or flight credit because of the experience downgrade, but I'll definitely get into that Q suite sooner rather than later. Just might take a bit more patience than originally anticipated. For those of you watching to the end, show some love by letting me know what your worst equipment swap was on a flight, and until next Sunday, safe travels. I'll see y'all next time.